2023 has been a pretty big year for this channel. You know, I've been making content here on and off for a couple years, but this was the year that I really dug into it and started streaming and putting out daily videos. And a big part of being able to do that was deciding that I was going to get an AMC A-list account so that I could see 3 movies a week in theaters and review those. And as a consequence of that, I have reviewed 72 movies this year. And I thought it might be fun for us to go ahead and rank them all. I might add some more categories here. But for now, we're just going to stick with the standard, you know, S through D. But, like, if I run into this one where, like, I just genuinely don't even remember reviewing that movie, I might have, like, a category of don't remember it. But why don't we get started? Look at all that. It feels wild. 72. Actually, before this stream, because I just reviewed 3 for this stream, and those are on here as well. But before that, I had reviewed 69 movies, and it kind of feels like a pity to break that number, because, you know, 69. Nice. But let's get started with the movies. And let's see. Rebel Moon. That was one that I recently reviewed. That, I would say, is a solid D. Zack Snyder has been given every opportunity to excel, and with really no excuses here, no studio that he can blame it on, nothing other than being left to his own devices, he gave a really, really pathetic film for us to see. And I will not be watching the director's cut, because if you wanted us to see a good movie, you should have released a good movie. Next up, we've got The Marvels. I am gonna put Marvels in C tier. It wasn't great. It wasn't like the worst movie ever. It's definitely not the worst MCU movie, but it was kind of a very resounding meh of a movie. Next up, we've got Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I have never played FNAF. I know a little bit about it. Like, I watched Vosh's review of every single FNAF jump scare, so, you know, I have like a passing familiarity with the franchise. But I thought the movie itself was, like, as a horror movie, it wasn't really scary and it wasn't really interesting. I'm gonna put that in C tier. Now, The Conjuring did not come out this year, but I am including movies that I reviewed this year, whether they came out in this year or not. And I have, if you, you know, want me to review something else, if you want me to review something specific, patreon.com/gayfesh, I will review something of your choice once a quarter at the $50 tier. So The Conjuring was a request by our very own Cy Deathful. And I'm really glad that Cy is making me watch the Conjuring verse, because it's an interesting look at seeing, because, like, the MCU has been out since 2008, and it's easy now to kind of forget the mad rush everyone was in to create their own cinematic universe. And since I never really got into the Conjuring films, I had never seen one until this year. It is interesting to go back and see how some of them, how some the studios were trying to set up their own cinematic universes, because The Conjuring is very clearly made as the start of their own cinematic universe. Like, I watched it and I'm like, oh wow, they're going with Annabelle right away. I would say for this one, I'm like torn between B and C. It was pretty generic. I think I'm gonna go with C. And next up, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. I'm going to put this one in A tier. I really like the Mission Impossible movies. This one was really nice to see. Issues with Tom Cruise as a person aside, I do admire the work that he puts into his movies and his commitment to doing all of those big stunts himself. You know, he trained for months basically just to do a stunt where he, you know, drove his motorcycle off of a cliff and then parachuted. That was a cool shot. And I can appreciate it more knowing that he basically learned to be like an expert motocross driver for it. So that was a lot of fun. Sideful says C is for Conjuring. Yeah, pretty much. All right, what's next? Elemental. Elemental, I'm gonna say that is a B. I liked some of the things that it had to say in terms of like systemic and especially environmental racism. That was one of the big things. I think at the time, I described it more as like the social model of disability, which I still think is valid, but considering that they were going for more direct like racial parallels between the different elements, I would say that like environmental racism is probably a more apt description for what it was, but because the city is built by the water elementals, it really isn't, you know, designed for the fire elementals to live in, and so there's a lot of ways that they have to change their living habits in order to survive in a world where water's everywhere. And it didn't do well initially on release, but it sounds like it picked up steam, especially in the foreign markets, and had kind of like a slow burn of a box office success. So yeah, I liked it. It was pretty good. Dix the Musical. This is S tier. Absolutely S tier. Everyone who is gay needs to see this movie. It is an incredibly campy movie. It's not like quality in terms of like, say, a Kubrick or a Scorsese film. It is what it is, which is kind of like, it's more in the tradition of like John Waters. It's a very campy, gay, irreverent musical. For God's sake, like, there's one of the characters is a flying disembodied vagina. It's a very silly movie, and I recommend it. Poor Things, which I just finished reviewing, this goes S tier handily. This movie is going to do well at the Oscars, and it deserves its place in S tier. It's definitely up here. Atheist Manda says Dix is on your to-do list of films. Yes, absolutely. It's so good. There's one particular song that I'm not going to say the lyrics because I don't want this video to get demonetized, but it was stuck in my head for weeks, and basically the hook of it is God is a particular F slur. I couldn't stop singing that. Okay, so Oppenheimer. This is going to probably make some people angry because I'm not giving it an S. I'm going to give it an A. And this will make people even angrier. If not for the score, it would be a B. The score for this film does so much heavy lifting that if Ludwig Göransson doesn't get the Oscar for this score, then the Academy fucked up. There are so many scenes of people just sitting in a room and talking that without that score really like selling the emotion and the intensity and the stakes of what they're talking about, it would just completely fall flat. Like, really, Christopher Nolan put so much of the weight of this movie on the back of its score. I can't undersell it enough. And I also know a lot of people were talking about the Trinity test scene, and like, I'm sorry, I thought that scene was underwhelming. And mostly because of how hyped they had been about it and how they had done it practically and all this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, well, you did it practically. You obviously didn't set off a real nuke, which means I'm looking at a non-nuclear explosion, which means you didn't set off enough explosives to actually match the intensity of the blast of the Trinity test. So I'm seeing an inferior explosion. So yeah, I think they should have done the Trinity test just CG. It's a really solid movie, and again, as disappointed as I was with the Trinity test scene itself, that's not really the point of the movie. The movie isn't really about the atom bomb. The movie is about McCarthyism and the politics of the era more so than just the Atheist Mando says Christopher Nolan relies heavily on Hans Zimmerman. Hans Zimmerman did not do the score for this movie. It was Ludwig Göransson. I know Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer have made a lot of movies together, and I love Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite composers, but he didn't do this one. This was Ludwig Göransson, who Ludwig Göransson is quickly becoming my new favorite composer. He has done so many recent soundtracks that I love. He did Black Panther. He did The Mandalorian. He did Oppenheimer. Like, Oppenheimer would be a B movie at best without his score. Great acting by RDJ. He deserves recognition. Yes. And I didn't know that Downey was in the film until I saw him. And even when I first saw him, because he was in, you know, like he was balding with a comb over and all this stuff, I couldn't quite place him as Robert Downey Jr. at first. It took me a little bit going, is that Downey? He looks like him and sounds like him, but is that him? And yeah, of course it was him. No, and also, like, that's kind of the role that he, you know, was his bread and butter before Iron Man, you know, just kind of playing the Weasley side character who ends up being a villain, right? That was kind of his thing before Iron Man. And it was a role well suited to him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, the comb over was doing heavy lifting to mask him. All right. Next up, we've got Napoleon. This goes in C tier. Ridley Scott should know better. He has been making good movies for too long to give us this much of a stinker, to spend this much money on a movie that has so little to say. It deserves no accolades, and may God have mercy on your soul. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. You know where this is going. This is the best superhero movie this year. This is the best superhero movie since Infinity War, basically. Holy shit, this movie's amazing. Atheist Manda says Alien Covenant was good. Well, I haven't seen Alien Covenant. And, you know, it feels like Ridley Scott maybe just kind of has run out of steam. Like, maybe some creators only have so many movies in them, and then they're just kind of on autopilot after that. Like, M. Night Shyamalan. I think M. Night Shyamalan made 2.5 really good movies before people realized that he was just following a formula. Like, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, phenomenal films. Phenomenal films. Still love them to this day. Signs had some problems with it. A lot of people took issue with the logistics of the movie, but I would argue that they're focusing on the wrong thing, because Signs was more like an emotional journey for the main character. And sure, some of the logistics of why are the aliens invading a planet that's 70% water if they're allergic to it doesn't really make sense. That's not really the point of the movie. And so while I think the movie has a lot of problems with it, I think the emotional core of that movie is really good. But after that, basically everything Shyamalan has done has kind of been pathetic. And yeah, I just maybe Ridley Scott has just hit his Shyamalan point. I don't know. But yeah, no, Spider-Verse is amazing. I actually reviewed it twice, basically, because I reviewed it for the channel, and then I went on a panel with Star Panda and Council of Geeks where we talked about it. I can't really think of anything specific to say about it right now, but it handily deserves its spot on S tier, and I really hope that Beyond the Spider-Verse doesn't come out for like 5 more years so that they can give it enough time to be a worthy follow-up. Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I'm going to say B tier for this one. I like the Hunger Games movies, but they do sometimes... I felt like by the 4th one, it was like, this really should have just been a longer 3rd one. But then with this one, because the book, it has basically like a 2-part structure to it, they ended up making the 2nd part just the 3rd act of this movie, and so it's structured really weird. I liked that the main character was Snow. I like having villain protagonists, especially if we get to see, you know, them starting out as a good person, or at least like a morally complicated person before their descent into villainy. And the fact that, you know, it's not just we've got the product, we're gonna make a prequel. Like, it was literally, it's still based on one of the books. It wasn't like they just decided to make a prequel. It's still a story that Suzanne Collins wrote. You know, I think that definitely helped it. So yeah, I would say B tier. All right, Meg 2. This one, it was bad, but it was also somewhat schlocky fun. It's between a C or a D, but I'm leaning more toward D. I've had better experiences. Priscilla isn't really an entertaining film. I think it has important things to say about the nature of abusive relationships and how, you know, even as the abuse is going on, it might not look like it, you know, like the abuser doesn't necessarily look like a mustache twirling villain or anything like that. So like I would say it has a lot of good educational value in like showing the signs of an abusive and controlling relationship, but it's not exactly like something that I'm clamoring to see. I'll put that in B tier. Dumb Money, honestly C tier. The fact that they like completely ignored the actual events that took place, and like they ended it with like a bit of a hope spot where like, oh, some of the people came out okay, when in reality the people who made off like bandits in the short squeeze were actually just other hedge funds, and like the, you know, the little people, the people who were following on the memes of Wall Street bets, most of them lost everything. And I thought it was irresponsible of them to try and paint it as like a, you know, a David versus Goliath story when that's not how it actually played out. C tier is coming out strong. Golda is D tier. Golda is made entirely to get Helen Mirren an Academy Award for which she doesn't deserve one. It's not a very interesting film. She's got so much makeup on that she can barely emote. And I haven't seen Maestro yet. That's definitely on my list. I'm definitely going to be reviewing that one because I know it's going to get Oscar nominations, and I'm going to be reviewing everything that's nominated for the Oscars this year. But it's one of two movies this year in which the lead character is basically wearing Jew face. And I think a lot more people were talking about that with Maestro because it was like, more specifically, Bradley Cooper was putting on a prosthetic nose, whereas with Helen Mirren it's more of like an entire face prosthetic thing to change her face to look more like Golda Meir. But like, one of the biggest mistakes that this movie made was showing actual footage of Golda Meir at the end, because you can see how animated and expressive the real Golda Meir was in video versus Helen Mirren, who's got like 10 pounds of latex on her face and can basically move her eyes in her mouth. That, and the fact that they didn't portray Henry Kissinger as the worst person to ever live, that's a problem. So, no, it wasn't good. Barbie, straight to the S tier. I loved this movie. It was phenomenal. It was great. You've seen it. What's to say? It's Barbie. It was amazing. Blue Beetle, I'm gonna say B tier, but like bottom of B tier. It was probably the most meh, but inoffensively meh superhero movie this year. It was a fairly basic superhero story, but I did enjoy a lot of the performances in it. And I think that they said that even though the DCEU is over, I think that they said that Blue Beetle will be carrying forward into the DCU. So I think this can actually count as the first DCU movie, even though Chapter 1 doesn't officially begin until Superman Legacy. So you can watch it while thinking, okay, I get to see this guy again. Which isn't necessarily like the best criteria for judging a superhero movie. I think a movie should be judged on its own merits. Like, you should be able to watch a movie not just as homework for future movies, but to enjoy the movie itself. And it had a lot of fun to it. I think it was okay. Bottoms. Bottoms, I'm gonna say B tier. It was a lot of fun, but it was very clearly like trying to be the new Mean Girls, but it was written like it wasn't written just to be a good movie. It was written to try and be a cult classic. And I don't think cult classics can be deliberately made. I think they have to come about organically. And it was still a lot of fun. I enjoyed myself with it, but who's like, it was a flash in the pan. It came out, people were kind of hyped on it because, like, initially it's like, oh yes, I want to see lesbians beating each other up, but then like it seems to have no lasting impact. Nobody's talking about that movie now. Dream Scenario, I would say this one's B tier. I really liked it. It wasn't like the strongest performance of Nick Cage's career, but it was a pretty decent one, and it's kind of like a depressing film, which is so, I mean, you could have a depressing film in S tier, but I was going in expecting something a little bit more funny and less depressing, but it actually is more a movie about somebody dealing with all of the consequences of fame and then cancel culture and all that stuff. Even though the scenario is fantastical of him just appearing in everyone's dreams and he doesn't even know why it's happening, the ways in which he kind of gets milkshake ducked feels very true to a lot of real life examples. Are Netflix films on this tier list? I think so. There are a couple films in here. Most of these films I did see in the theater. And actually, I didn't put Nimona on this list, even though I saw it this year. And I think I did that because I didn't review it on my channel. I did do a review panel. It was me and Star Panda and Mixed Dizzy. We talked about it there. But since that wasn't on my channel, I decided not to include it. I decided I was just going to put movies that I've reviewed for this channel on here. If Nimona was on this list, it would be S tier for sure. Nimona is an amazing film. Anatomy of a Fall, this is S tier. This movie was really good. I'm disappointed that it's not going to be France's pick for best foreign language film at the Oscars, because it really deserves it. It was a really good courtroom drama, and it is a really good film where like nothing is actually resolved. You don't know the truth of what happened, and you just kind of have to like, and it even after like the court case is over, life just kind of goes on, and you're still left with, okay, the trial's over, but we really don't know what happened. I really liked that one. Did I see and include the Dungeons and Dragons movie? No, I haven't seen it yet. I've been meaning to at some point. It looks like a lot of fun. I just haven't gotten around to it. Wonka, S tier. I need to see the Paddington movies. I haven't yet. And I've heard that those are amazing. And if Wonka is any indication, yes, 100%. This movie was surprisingly amazing. I talked about in the review how bad the trailer is, how bad the trailer made it look. And the only reason that I went to see it was because it was directed by the guy who did Paddington, which I haven't seen, but I've heard good things about. And this, really, this is one of the best films that I have seen in a very long time. It's so good. Again, all of these, if you want to see my full thoughts on them, I have reviewed them all. In fact, I think I actually put together a playlist of all of these movies, and once I put this up as its own video, I'll link the playlist in the description there. But yeah, Wonka, S tier for sure. Godzilla -1, I'm gonna say A tier. This was a really, really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it had a lot of good things to say about post-war Japan, about found families, and a criticism of nationalism and of Imperial Japan, and a criticism of the use of kamikaze fighters. It was a really good movie, and it's like the first Godzilla movie that I've seen where I wanted Godzilla to go away so that I could get more stuff with the humans. Haunted Mansion. This was D tier. And it wasn't D tier because it was like, it's not like, incompetently made. It was just another kind of soulless Disney cash grab into one of their properties. There was redeeming qualities to it, but it just, like, I barely remember it. So yeah, it's nobody's talking about this movie. It came and went like the last time they did a Haunted Mansion movie. Does anybody remember that they actually did a Haunted Mansion movie like 20 years ago with Eddie Murphy? Nobody saw it. and then they tried it again, and I don't think anyone saw this one either. They didn't even release it on Halloween. It was a summer release. It was like, no, save it for October. What are you doing? Or at least September. That's when horror movies really start to come out, September and October. I mean, and it's not really a horror movie either. It's a Disney adventure movie with ghosts, you know? Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm gonna say B tier on this one. It was definitely, I'm definitely glad that this was Indiana Jones' final movie, so that the final movie wasn't Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull I would probably create a new category below D just for that movie. Holy shit, I hated that movie. But no, I genuinely liked this one. I thought, and I was actually surprised that while they did recognize how hated Shia LaBeouf's character was and killed him off screen in between movies, that they didn't treat it as a joke, but as like something that had real character consequences for Indiana Jones, and is kind of like one of the big motivators of his character in this film is his marriage falling apart because of the death of his son. And I felt like they treated that story very respectfully. Quinn says, I remember Nostalgia Critic reviewed the first Haunted Mansion movie. He's probably the only one who did. All right, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. This is a C tier movie. There's some fun action to it. Patrick Wilson, I think, did a really good job as Orm, Aquaman's half brother. But you know, I just reviewed that one. You can see my review. I talked about it last week. I don't really have much to go over it. Saltburn, S tier. I'm in love with this movie. Like, it was not at all the movie that I was expecting it to be. And once I realized the movie that it actually was, you probably realize about halfway through, oh, that's what this movie is. It's a wild fucking ride. Rosamund Pike is also probably another strong contender for, I would say, Best Supporting Actress. I don't know if she would be Best Actress for this film because she is kind of a side character. But she's great in it. And let's see. My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is a big fat D. It was incompetently made. It was directed by Verdal. I don't even remember the name. She's the star, and she's the one who wrote the others. But I think this is the first time she directed anything. And it's not really a story so much as a series of vignettes that are very, very amateurishly edited together. It was very forgettable. The only really memorable part of the movie was the new character, the mayor of the town that they visit in Italy, who is a non-binary character. They were a lot of fun, but other than that, it was, yeah. Next up, we've got Expendables, and that goes straight to D. This is the worst action movie I've seen this year, with the exception of the there was like a whip knife fight with Tony Jaa that was pretty well done, and that's because Tony Jaa is like actually, you know, a martial artist who has done good action in movies before. But other than that, all of every single action scene was like, you know, punch, cut, no real choreography to it, no interesting story whatsoever. It just wasn't good. Boys in the Boat is a C tier. It's as far as sports movies goes, it is definitely a sports movie. Your dad will probably like it, but that's all I gotta say. It Lives Inside. I'm gonna say this was B tier. It wasn't really like the most memorable movie that I've seen. It was kind of I wouldn't say standard monster movie. It took like a kind of a demon that's in Indian mythology, and particularly like Hindu mythology, and did interesting things with it. I liked it was an invisible demon that was like still like had a physical presence, so like even though you would expect, well, if it's invisible it must be able to phase through walls, but like you could close the door on it and stuff like that, and it would have to, you know, deal with all of that. I thought there were clever things that they did with it. I liked seeing it was an all Indian or like Indian American cast, or mostly. I think she had a teacher who was not Indian, but the majority of the cast was Indian, and it's nice to see that. Usually, if you're seeing an movie starring Indians, it's from Bollywood. And actually, I've been seeing more movies from Asian American creators recently, and this was one of those, and it was nice to see. It Lives Inside. It was pretty decent. If you see it on streaming, I would give it a shot. Killers of the Flower Moon. This was a really good movie. I don't know if I want to put it on S. It's either A or S. I watched this one with Demon Mama. We did a big hour-long review of it. That was a lot of fun, and I almost have more fun memories of just seeing it with her and talking about it with her than I did with the movie itself. It was really good, though. I think I'm going to put it in A. There was a lot of interesting choices, but I think I still would have preferred that the movie was more focused on the Osage themselves instead of all of the white men who are plotting to kill the Osage. I feel like if you're going to be telling a story about atrocities done to Native Americans, you should be having them tell those stories. It should be from their perspective. And the best parts of the movie were the scenes from the perspective of the Osage. But Scorsese, he's a white guy and he wrote a movie about white criminals like he usually does. You hope C tier wins. All right. The Kill Room. I really enjoyed this movie. Actually, I'm going to put this in an A tier. This is a really fun movie. It kind of went under the radar of a lot of people, but it's a movie about an art dealer who gets into money laundering for the mob, and the artist is a hitman, and I thought it had a lot of fun things to say about how vapid the art scene is and how criminal it is in its own merit. Sure, she's doing money laundering for some local drug dealers, but we find out that there's other art dealers in her trade who are working for Russian oligarchs and stuff like that. So it was good. Talk to Me. This is an S tier. This is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. And I think it had some legs in the box office too. I think it was there for a while. It's a pretty short movie. I think it was like a tight 90 minutes, but it told a really compelling story. I liked that it had a bunch of bad characters who are just portrayed as flawed characters, not really bad, just complicated asshole teenagers. And I genuinely enjoyed this one. Phenomenal ending. The last scene was so good. Gran Turismo. This is another C tier. Most of the sports movies I saw this year are C tier. I don't really like sports movies generally. I feel like they're pretty formulaic. And this one goes in there as well. It's a Wonderful Knife. This is A tier. This is a wonderful schlocky slasher film. It is a very funny premise of taking, the It's a Wonderful Life, I wish I was never born kind of a thing, and throwing in some scream slasherness to it. Great performances all around. A wholesome sapphic Christmas horror movie. You should check that one out. Joyride, that's a D tier. Joyride is so forgettable. It really was just... I haven't seen The Hangover, but it feels like a discount Hangover. It's not really the kind of film that I go for. I didn't enjoy it at all. Silent Night. I'm gonna put that one on A tier. I really enjoyed this one. Surprisingly enjoyed this one. It's John Woo, so it's got that kind of an action schlock that he goes for, but action schlock with panache, with an artistic flair to it, and the fact that it was a silent film. I had no idea going into it that it would be. That was a nice surprise. I really liked it. The Holdovers. This is S tier. This was a really, really good movie about broken people finding each other for Christmas. A lot of care was taken to make it not look like a period piece about the 70s, but to make it look like a movie that was made in the 70s. I really appreciated that. Next goal wins, D tier. Taika Waititi, another person who I think has hit his Shyamalan limit. I have severe problems with this movie, especially how they threw in transphobia as like a character growth moment, when in reality that transphobia didn't happen. That pissed me off. Yeah, I didn't like that movie. Strays. This was a really funny movie. I'm going to give this one a B tier. And it's also, I think, probably the best example I have seen of doing realistic CGI animals. Like, The Lion King could have learned some lessons from Strays, because even though like the dogs are animated to still look like realistic dogs, they have a full range of emotion. You can really read their emotions in it. And like what Jon Favreau did with The Lion King, where he's just like, oh well, they just need to look like animals so their faces never change, which is like, that's not what animals do. I have had cats all my life, and I can tell you cats are very emotive in their ears and in their eyes. So for you to have a movie with a whole bunch of cats and for them to just not have any kind of emotion whatsoever in their face, that was a mistake, Jon Favreau. You should take some lessons from Strays. Strays is also, it's interesting that I would put Strays here in B tier when it is also kind of a Hangover clone. You know, it's one of those raunchy frat pack comedy kind of a things. I mean, it's starring Will Ferrell, so, you know, but it was fun. Now we've got The Thing, which did not come out this year. It came out in 1982, but this was actually one of the movies. There was like 1 week where literally no new movies were in theaters, at least not in my area. So I decided to go back and watch some classic horror movies, and I threw The Thing in here. I really liked The Thing. I don't know if I would put it in S tier though. I think I'm gonna put it in A tier. I definitely get why it's a cult classic. The special effects are really cool. I mean, they're dated. You can tell, like, you know, everything's kind of rubbery, but like, God, they were so creative with it. And I think there's some weird editing choices, particularly toward the end, that I don't know were whether they were a deliberate choice or whether it was a case of them not being able to afford reshoots, and so there was some weird stuff there. But I think A tier, that's crazy. Yeah, no, I knew when I said I was gonna put it A tier that it was probably gonna get some people pissed off. But yeah, I think A tier. I think A tier is good. Retribution, Liam Neeson. Oh God, this was so forgettable. Going through this list, some of these are like, wait, that I saw that movie. This is just Liam Neeson in a car for 90 minutes. It's D tier. It was lazy. It was Liam Neeson going, I still want to do action, but in this movie I'm driving a car the whole time, so all I have to do is sound intimidating like I did in Taken, but without having to stand up. It just, yeah. You love how the word IMAX is bigger than the title in the Marvels. I was trying to find a good poster for the Marvels, and they're just really, like, something that showed the title large enough, but was also, yeah, it just, there was a bunch of posters. There was some like fan-made posters, but I didn't want to go with that. I wanted to go with like official posters, and yeah, I didn't really like any of the posters for the Marvels. But Fetch, standing is hard. Standing is hard. Look, I get it. Liam Neeson, he's in his what, like 70s now? Yeah, he's 71, so I get it. He's old. But it's completely forgettable. It's not worth it. Standing hard. Ferrari. I'm gonna put Ferrari in B tier. It did some interesting things. It's definitely the best of the sports movies that I've seen this year, because it wasn't just about the sport. It was, you know, about the family dynamics and like the cutthroat capitalist nature of everything, but also, you know, like dealing with families and lines of succession. I kind of described it as like, you know, Game of Thrones with cars, but I didn't walk away from it feeling like it had big important things to say. Dreamin' Wild, this is kind of, I actually forgot that I saw this movie until I saw it again, or until I saw it in the list. But I remember liking this one. It's a very kind of like your dad will like it, It's not like a big movie or anything like that, but you know, it's about a guy who comes into fame like 20, 30 years after he wrote that music. It's, you know, it's kind of like a little indie film. I did point out how they put Zoe Deschanel on the cover when she's barely in the film. But yeah. Marsh King's Daughter. I liked this one. This is A tier. I thought this Daisy Ridley gave a really good performance. Ben Mendelsohn as her dad was phenomenal. Very, very intimidating. It was a good like revenge film. Equalizer 3, I would say B tier. Oh wow, B tier. We have now gotten into we've gotten the second row for it now. Yeah, B is pulling ahead, Quinn. I know you're pushing for C, but actually it's interesting how even though B has pulled ahead by 3, we've still got a fairly even balance among the others. C is actually behind by 1, but they're all mostly moving along at the same rate. Yeah, Equalizer 3. I haven't seen any of the other Equalizers. I really liked the action in it, and it was mostly presented as something that, like, a standalone movie that you don't need to have seen the others to have seen it, but then up until the end where they throw in stuff to be like, this is how it connects to the other films, and I was like, okay, I haven't seen those, I don't care. But I liked the action. It was good action. What's next? Sound of Freedom. Straight to the D tier. Straight to D tier. It wasn't competently made. I think like the guy who the movie is about right now is like dealing with like sexual assault allegations of his own, possibly sex trafficking of his own. Like it's so weird how like every accusation is a confession with these people. I put out my review of it. I would actually, if you are at all interested in the problems with Sound of Freedom, I would recommend watching Dead Domain's video on it. They did a deep dive into, you know, the lies that the movie tells and the truth behind the organization. There's also, like, I feel like there needs to be, and I don't know if I'm the person to do it, but talking about the model, the pay it forward model that Angel Studios is using, because Sound of Freedom, I think it closed out the box office with a couple $100 million, but the pay it forward model that Angel Studios was using, where they're like, hey, you should go and pay for somebody else's ticket so that they can go see it even if they can't afford it. I think they made like $500 million doing that. So they, like, more people gave money to Angel Studios to let other people see the movie for free than actually ended up seeing the movie, and that looks like a really shady money laundering scheme to me, honestly. And it's a system that they have used with some of their other projects. Like, actually, there's a TV show that Angel Studios produces called The Chosen, which is about Jesus's apostles, and I actually watched that show. And I don't hate it. I think it's, as far as like explicitly Christian entertainment goes, I think it's really well produced. But they also do a lot of Fathom Events things with it, and they use the same pay it forward scheme with all of that stuff, and it just seems a little weird. Let's see, Jules. I liked Jules. I'm gonna put Jules in B tier. That was the movie about an alien who crashes into an elderly man's backyard, and he just kind of keeps the alien a secret with him and a couple of his elderly friends. And it was mostly a story about, you know, lonely people and how we kind of need community and to be together and stuff like that. Yeah, it was good. Last Voyage of the Demeter, I'm going to say C tier. Give that one to you, Quinn. All of the Dracula kills were all very one note. Like, I get it, he's a vampire, he sucks your blood, but even so, like, I felt like they could have been a little bit more creative with the way that he kills people, but it all just felt very, very samey. The Color Purple, I'm gonna say B tier for this one. Like I said, I just reviewed it, and I think if you want to see The Color Purple, you should just see the original. I don't really think that the songs added anything to it. If you are a fan of musicals, it's fine, but I don't think it improved it. Haunting in Venice, I liked this one. I'm gonna say B tier as well. Sorry, Quinn, I think B tier is gonna win this one. It was the least star-studded, I think, of any of the Kenneth Branagh Poirot movies to date. And it was also using a less well-known story from Agatha Christie to begin with, and then they like heavily altered it there. So it's basically an original story, just, you know, set in the Poirot universe. But I liked it. It was fun. I liked that they were trying to add in the potential supernatural aspects to the film, even though they had a rational explanation for it and all that stuff. Shortcomings. I really liked this movie. Nobody saw it, but I think this one goes in A tier. And what do we got? Oh, The Retirement Plan. This is D tier. D tier. This movie sucked. I know Nick Cage will do basically anything for money. I don't know. I don't even think his heart was in this one. Landscape with Invisible Hand. This is S tier. Nobody saw this movie, which is really disappointing. I thought it had a lot of things to say. It was basically just a huge indictment of Amazon as a company, even though Amazon I don't think is mentioned it, but basically the alien invasion, they are Amazon. They dominate the world through capitalistic means, basically. When Evil Lurks is S tier. This is the best horror movie I have seen maybe ever. Definitely this year. When I put out the review for it, like the thumbnail says, the best film I have seen this year. And I'm trying to think if that still holds true. I would need, once we've got all everything else here, and I've got all of my S tiers, I can compare it with the others. But oh my god, When Evil Lurks is so good. I love this movie. The Inventor, this is C tier. It was pretty boring. It's low budget animation, which, you know, I don't mind seeing. I don't think every animated picture needs to be a bloated monstrosity with a bunch of celebrity voices. Although this did have, like, I think Stephen Fry and Daisy Ridley or some of the voices in here. But I remember it was a musical that had like the least energetic and least memorable songs ever. This felt more like a movie that like your fourth grade teacher would roll out on the VHS when you were, you know, when it was a Friday and she didn't want to teach anything and she just wanted to grade papers and pacify the class. The Royal Hotel is also a C tier. I think it was, it had some interesting performances, and like dealing with women in a vulnerable situation and, you know, how they get out of it. But really the thing that like stands out in my mind the most in this movie is that Hugo Weaving was in it, and I didn't realize it was him, basically for most of the film, because he had a full beard and had like a very rural Australian accent, which is just not what I'm used to seeing him as. And now we've got The Conjuring 2, another Patreon request. Let's see, where did I put The Conjuring? Did I put that in... Oh, there it is in C tier. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't putting The Conjuring above The Conjuring 2. Yeah, we'll put that one in C tier as well. Hey, look at that. C tier. Pulling ahead, Quinn. The Boy and the Heron. This was really good. It's not the best Miyazaki movie that I've seen, but it was really good. I'm gonna put this in A tier. It's a gorgeous film. All of Miyazaki's films are gorgeous. I don't think that it's an S tier film. Freelance, very, very, very forgettable, but I'll put it in C tier. Eileen, I really liked this movie. It was not at all what I was expecting it to be. It was a very, very messy movie. This goes in S tier. it has all, like, if you see the trailer, you think it's about this femme fatale who has come to corrupt this ingenue, but the reality is so much messier than that, and like all of the characters are fucked up in their own ways. So I really recommend seeing Eileen. Eileen was a good movie. We got Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. This goes in C tier. It was kind of a short movie. It was alright. It wasn't anything good. A bunch of the characters didn't get any development whatsoever. It was meh. Wish. I liked Wish. It wasn't great. I'm gonna say B tier for Wish. It's not a bad movie by any stretch. I think people have just kind of running into Disney fatigue on it. Some people were trying to blame, its box office on it being woke, quote unquote, but that's stupid and you're all stupid and shut up. Saw X. Okay, so here we are. Where do I put this one? Because I was about to walk out of this movie. And I decided to stick through it. I knew that I wasn't going to like it, but I wanted to give it a fair shake to review it as like for people who do like that kind of a movie. And in fact, it's probably one of my favorite reviews that I have done of a movie, because I was able to step outside myself so much and analyze it for what it was and give recommendations on it for the kind of people who like that kind of torture porn movie. And I even got like a comment on that video that I think I pinned to that video, because somebody else said they really appreciated how I was able to step outside myself and give the review that people who want to see this kind of film would be looking for. And so, but like I said, I was gonna walk out of it. So how do I rank this? Is this, because I guess this is like my personal ranking, right? So I guess I would have to put it in D tier, because this is how I feel about the movies. And I never want to see another Saw movie again. They aren't for me. So, in that vein, I would say D tier. But like, if I were to judge it as to how I would rank like that kind of a movie, it would definitely go higher up. I think this is my personal ranking. I think this is how I felt about these movies. So I think because of that, it goes in D tier. It's not so bad. It's good tier. It's not that kind of a movie. I mean, I guess to some extent that is what the Saw movies are, but it's also more about really the Saw movies are about the torture porn, right? Which there is a schlock elements to that. And I like schlock, just, not the kind of schlock that makes me like, wants to jump out of my skin, Gotta keep it personal. Yeah, I agree. The Exorcist Believer, I appreciate that they were trying to do something different here. They weren't just trying to remake The Exorcist as it was. Although, if you look at the trailers, you would think it's like an actual direct sequel to the originals. And you would think that the mother from the first movie is one of the main characters when she's like in like 2 scenes. The one thing that I really liked about this movie is how they were trying to move away from the Catholic Church as like the default. Like my criticisms of the Conjuring movies is that they're like basically Catholic propaganda, and a big reason that we have this kind of Catholic dominance in horror films is because of The Exorcist. And in this movie, like, they at the end they bring in finally the Catholic priests to do the exorcism, because like the Catholic Church is like saying no, we're not getting involved in this one, and he comes in to be the hero, and like, oh, thank God the Catholic priest is here, now now she'll be saved. And the Catholic priest dies almost immediately. And like, they were using exorcism methods from multiple cultures. The idea was like, ultimately it wasn't the faith, a specific correct faith to get with the exorcism. It was about the personal connection between like a father and his daughter. So I appreciate that they went for that, but overall I would say it's a C tier. It wasn't that entertaining. I actually, now that you can't even see the whole thing, I'm gonna shrink this down so that we can actually get the whole thing in one screen. There we go. Um, okay, so next up we've got The Creator. Where does The Creator go? I liked The Creator, but like the third act just became the whole the third act just became, let's remake the ending of Star Wars, where we forget about all of the social commentary going on about, you know, there was definite like racial allegory in the film with how the robots were treated. But a lot of that just kind of gets forgotten, and we're just doing like a schlocky blow up the Death Star to save everyone kind of a thing. So I think I would put it in B tier. All right, next up, we've got The Flash, straight to D tier. Horrible movie, never should have been released. If David Zaslav was going to shit can a DC movie, it should have been this one and not Batgirl. That's all I gotta say about that movie. That's all that movie deserves to have said about it. The Nun 2, also D tier. I did not enjoy it. This was actually the first Conjuring movie that I have seen, or Conjuring verse movie that I've seen, and the fact that I was able to call it half an hour before, oh god, they're gonna do a stupid thing where transubstantiation turns the wine cellar into blood, and that's how they defeat the nun, and then it turns out that that is what they did. I'm like I thought of it and said, no, that's too stupid. They're not doing that. And then they did it. Ugh. The music of Wish bothered you way too much. Yeah, I can get that. I initially described it as like they were trying to ape Lin-Manuel Miranda's style, but I talked to somebody else about it, and I think I might have changed my mind on that, and it's not really that they're trying to ape Lin-Manuel Miranda so much as they were just going for a more like modern pop sound for the songs, where instead of them being musical numbers, they were more like poppy numbers. Like, one of the big problems that I have with Disney musicals is at the end of the movie when they play the poppy rendition of the songs from the movies, because they usually strip all of the emotion out of it for just the poppy cover. Honestly, one of the worst examples I can think of, it's not even a Disney movie, it's in The Prince of Egypt, where it was Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey, who are both amazing singers, but they're doing like big showy vocal performances rather than like When You Believe is a very emotional song, and none of that was in that poppy cover at the end. And a lot of Disney movies do the same thing, like Moana. What was that? How Far I'll Go? Like the poppy cover of that at the end, just it's soulless, and you get a lot of that. And it feels like a lot of the songs in Wish were written to be that first. How dare you insult the absolute masterpiece, which is the Prince... No, Valhalla. I love The Prince of Egypt. It was an amazing movie. What I don't like is the Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey cover of When You Believe that they played at the end credits. That's what I'm critiquing. Prince of Egypt itself is an amazing movie. I just didn't like the poppy cover, which was like the version that was like playing in like on the radio and stuff like that. I hate that because that song was so good in the movie. And the reason it was so good is because they had like actual like musical theater people singing the performance. Or I think Michelle Pfeiffer did her own singing in that role. But the actually I think Sandra Bullock's character, the singing voice for her was the same singer who was the singing voice of Nala in The Lion King. So people, you know, the musical singing is very different from like pop performance singing. You have to have an emotional intentionality in it. You can't just be doing a vocal performance. You have to be acting while you're singing. And I feel like when you popify musical numbers, you lose that. You lose the acting performance, which is a big part of what makes those songs great. Quinn says, I've forgotten Nala sings in The Lion King. Yeah, she only sings in like Can You Feel the Love Tonight? So it's just one song. But although I think the Jon Favreau version that was Beyonce was Nala, so they gave Beyonce a new song for that movie. But yeah, no, Valhalla. I love Prince of Egypt. It is one of my favorite films. It is a really, really good film. Okay, we've got 3 more to do, and then we are done with this tier list. The Persian version. I'm gonna put this one in B tier. It wasn't the movie that I was expecting. The trailer played it more as like a wacky rom-com where a lesbian gets knocked up by a drag queen, but that's like actually a very minor part of the story, and it's actually more a story of like generational trauma and like, you know, immigrant stories and stuff like that, and the pregnancy itself, and like the, you know, the drag queen is actually a very minor role in the movie, even though in the trailers they play up that character as like one of the main characters. But yeah, it was interesting. Wasn't what I was expecting. I think it was pretty good. I don't know if I would recommend it to people. It's a very particular kind of a movie, but yeah. The Witch. This was another one of the movies. It's a more recent one, but it didn't come out this year. But I reviewed it this year. It was during that week where nothing new was in theaters, so I was watching some classic horror movies. I really liked The Witch. This goes in S tier. That was a really, really good movie. Really solid horror movie. And then last, we've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And I think you go in A tier. I really liked it. I really liked that movie. I thought it was, for a franchise that's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they've never really felt like teenagers. Like, they, you know, had like the totally radical attitude that, you know, it was really more drawn from like surfer culture. And I don't know why we decided that surfer culture was the same as being a teenager, but, you know, for a long time that's what they were. But like, they got actual teenagers for the voice cast and had them all record together, and they all felt like actual kids, and that was a really good take on it. I really liked that movie. Gayfish, you should see The Northman if you like The Witch. It's the same director, right? Yeah, I should watch that one. Blood Video Company says they felt like 90s teenagers from the 90s. Are you talking about the classic TMNT ones, or these guys? The 90s being like teenagers that are versus such a okay, the classic. Gotcha. Yeah, I would say, well, and I would also probably say that as a child of the 90s, TMNT probably did inform my idea of what a teenager was. Because, you know, like, when you're like single digits, when you're like 8 or 9, you think teenagers are the coolest. And, you know, well, if they've got nunchucks as well, that's even cooler. But anyway, that's it. That is my tier list. And sorry, Quinn, but it looks like B tier won. Although C tier came in second, so you're not all lost. But let's take a look. Let's see. S tier. Why don't I pick right here the best movie of the year from the selection here? Unfortunately, I don't have Nimona on here. Otherwise, that would also be in the contention. But the best movie of the year that I reviewed on this channel is what I'm saying. And like I said, When Evil Lurks, when I reviewed it, it was the best film that I had seen that year. So let's compare it. First, let's put it over here and let's see if any other film... Come on. All right, Dixie, go over here. Let's see if any of these films I would say is better. Poor Things... might be. Let's compare some of the others. Not Dix. Dix isn't better than When Evil Lurks. Across the Spider-Verse, maybe. Let's move that over here. When Evil Lurks is better than Barbie, I'm gonna say it. Better than Anatomy of a Fall. Wonka, let's move you over here. Saltburn, let's move you over here. When Evil Lurks is better than Talk to Me. I will say that. Talk to Me is really good. When Evil Lurks is better. Holdovers, let's move you over here. Yeah, okay, so judging from these, we've got When Evil Lurks, Poor Things, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Wonka, Saltburn, and The Holdovers. I would say these 6 are the best of the year that I have reviewed, but which one is the best one? Where's Oppenheimer? Oppenheimer is an A tier. Yeah, Oppenheimer didn't get an S tier. And if it weren't for Ludwig Göransson, it would be in B tier. I know, shocking, but that's where I put it. Okay, it's really hard to say. These were all such good movies. I just saw Poor Things yesterday, So maybe I'm still in like the post theater high for that one. I really enjoyed seeing it, and I've seen it more recently than the others, so that's probably weighing that one higher. God, but When Evil Lurks was such a surprise to me. I was really surprised how much I liked that movie. But in terms of all of these movies, the one that I would say moved me the most emotionally was Wonka. Maybe Wonka is the best movie that I saw this year. I don't know. I feel like these are all so good. I don't want to pick a best. We'll say these 6 are an S. Yeah, here, let's do it. And we'll move these 6 up here. There we go. Blood Video says, really, the best movie this year is the trailer and chocolate. Yeah, Wonka really was one of the best movies this year. I really liked that one. Okay, yep, I've got my my tier list. There it is. Let me zoom out so we can get it all in one frame. There you go. There we have it. Enjoy. Hey, thanks for watching. Your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream Mondays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific and Sundays at 2 p.m., so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons, with a very special shout out to my Whale Shark tier patron Ryan D and my Anemone friend tier patron Pistol Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.